How did the first Americans raise such enduring homes, without a single nail? Before us stands a dwelling as tall as a two-story house built to shelter 100 souls. And nearby, a graceful cone-shaped home, strong enough to defy the roaring winds of the Great Plains. Now imagine, all of it crafted without one piece of metal. No nails. No screws. No bolts. The native builders of this land possessed no metallurgy, but they held something far greater, an understanding. A wisdom born from generations who lived with the earth, not against it. They shaped young saplings, bound them with sinew, and wrapped them in bark, transforming nature's gifts into living shelters. Their architecture was not about force, but about harmony. Not rigidity, but resilience. Stay with us, as we uncover how these ancient engineers built homes that breathed with the land and the one secret material that made their creations stronger than stone. What if everything we think we know about building is only one way of seeing the world? To the indigenous builder, wood was never just something to be cut or hammered into place. It was alive, a being with its own character, its own strengths, and its quiet weaknesses. Before a single tree was felled, the master builder would study it. He'd watch how it reached for the sun, how it bent with the wind. He sought not only the straight and perfect trunks, but those shaped by the forest itself, curved and ready for purpose. This was no mere harvesting of timber, it was a conversation. A dialogue between man and forest. By listening to nature rather than conquering it, these builders learned to use the tree's own strength instead of fighting against it. They did not break the fibers, they followed them. Each bend, each joint, formed as nature had intended. The result was not a rigid frame of wood and will, but a living, breathing structure. One that could sway with the wind and endure what the earth demanded. Young willow, supple and forgiving, became the perfect arch. Mature cedar and oak, steadfast and proud, became the pillars of strength. Every tree had a purpose. Every curve, a meaning. This was not carpentry, it was the art of persuasion. The quiet mastery of guiding living wood into lasting form. The craftsmen of the First Nations worked not with haste, but with harmony. Their tools were simple: steam, water, and time itself. They never forced the wood. Instead, they guided its inner strength, its quiet energy, letting it find its own shape. Their hands held no steel. Only sharp stones, bone scrapers, and above all, patience beyond measure. Each structure rose slowly, like a ritual in motion. The process was calm, meditative, a union between builder and material. And when the work was done, the result was more than a house. It was a part of the land itself, standing for generations, blending gently into the earth that gave it life. This deep respect extended to every element: stone, clay, bark, or skin. Each was a gift from nature, to be shaped with wisdom, never waste. Perhaps that was the true secret behind the strength of their homes' reverence. Now, consider this: should modern architects learn from such patience? From such understanding of material and spirit? Tell us what you think. And yet, there was one more mystery: the bond that held entire civilizations together, without a single nail. The answer lay in the ancient art of binding. Where others used metal, these builders turned to life itself, the tendons of animals, and the fibers of plants. From bison or deer came strong sinews, nature's own glue, nature's rope. Each strand cleaned, split, and dried, then softened once more in water, made supple, ready to serve. When wrapped tight around the wooden joints, the tendons performed a quiet miracle. As they dried, they shrank, locking the frame together with tremendous force. The wood and sinew became one. Such bonds did not break. They breathed. They moved with the wind, yielded with the snow, and endured. This was not just construction. It was cooperation between man and the living world around him. This remarkable method gave every structure a kind of living stability, a dynamic strength that rigid, nailed joints could never achieve. The second key material was bast. The hidden inner bark of certain trees, like linden or elm. In the gentle warmth of spring, when the sap began to rise, the bark could be peeled away in long, graceful strips. These strips were soaked for days, sometimes weeks, until the fibers separated, revealing their hidden strength. From those fibers, the people wove ropes and cords of every size, ropes that could withstand the pull of time itself. Resistant to rot, supple yet strong, they bound together the mighty beams of longhouses and held fast the coverings of the wigwam. But such work was not for the impatient. It demanded time, precision, and a deep understanding of nature's design. To harvest and prepare these materials required the knowledge of both botanist and craftsman. A wisdom handed down, generation after generation. Guarded as one would guard a sacred story. Every knot, every twist, every wrap of sinew or fiber carried within it the memory of centuries. There were dozens of binding methods, each suited to a different joint, a different strain. Together, they formed a system as intricate as modern engineering itself. In the end, the frame of a house was not nailed, but sewn. The fibers reached deep into the grain of the wood, uniting every piece into a single living whole. It was an organic bond, not a mechanical one. So tell us, which of these ancient materials do you think was more versatile? The powerful sinew of the animal, or the enduring fiber of the tree? But remember, binding was only half the story. Are you ready to discover how native builders learned to shape living trees themselves, creating frameworks that never needed to be cut at all? A secret, passed quietly from generation to generation. How to build a home, without felling a single tree. Among the forest peoples, there existed one of the most extraordinary and most gentle building traditions ever known: the creation of living frames. To raise a domed home, a wigwam, the builders sought out a circle of young, supple trees, willow, or hazel. They did not cut them. Instead, they bent their tender tops inward, guiding them toward one another, until they met above the earth. There, they were bound together, forming a single, living vault. With time, those trees continued to grow, but in the shape given to them by human hands. Where they touched, their trunks merged, fusing into one solid, living frame. Such a house was not separate from the forest, it was the forest. Rooted deep, it could not be blown down by the wind. Its strength lay in life itself, in flexibility, in growth. The walls could bend, but would not break. Between these living pillars, the builders wove branches and poles, filling the gaps, shaping the form. The frame was then cloaked in bark, reeds, or animal hides, sealing warmth inside, keeping the cold at bay. The result was a home both warm and enduring. A shelter quite literally grown from the earth. Such a craft demanded patience and vision. The builder had to imagine years ahead, to see what the trees would one day become. It was a partnership between man and nature herself. These homes were not built on the land. They were built with it. Living organisms that changed with the seasons, offering shade in summer and warmth in winter. Their walls, quite literally, breathed. Of course, this remarkable method could not be used for every kind of dwelling. But its very existence challenges what we believe about pre-industrial construction. It reminds us that the strongest solutions are often the most natural. Now, here's a question for you: how long do you think it took a Lakota family to assemble and disassemble their home? Life on the Great Plains was bound to the rhythm of the bison. Where the herds went, the people followed. They needed a shelter that could move with them, light enough to travel, strong enough to endure the prairie winds. That shelter was the teepee. An elegant, cone-shaped marvel of engineering. Its frame began with long, straight poles, slender, light, yet incredibly strong. The finest of these came from the pine forests at the foot of the Rocky Mountains. Entire expeditions were sent to gather them. For on the open plains, no trees of such quality could be found. Construction began with 3, sometimes 4, main poles, set upright and tied together at their tips. Their lower ends spread outward, forming the foundation of the cone. Around this core, the remaining poles were placed in a perfect circle. 15, 20, sometimes more, depending on the size of the lodge. Their tops met gracefully at a single point, creating a frame both simple and strong. And the shape was no accident. The cone defied the wind. Its smooth sides guided the prairie gusts harmlessly around the structure, leaving it steady even in the fiercest storms. Over this frame was stretched a heavy covering, stitched from 10, 20 bison hides. Thick, tough, and weatherproof. It pressed the poles down, anchoring the teepee firmly to the earth. Along the base, wooden pegs held the cover in place. At the top, an opening allowed smoke to rise, flanked by two movable flaps. The ears of the teepee, adjusted with long poles to control the draft, no matter which way the wind might blow. So tell me, which do you think was harder? Finding those perfect, straight poles, or sewing together that vast, heavy covering of hide? Either way, the cone was perfection. A home born for the plains. In our next chapter, we journey eastward to the great forests of the Northeast, where the Iroquois and their neighbors built immense fortress-like homes. Longhouses, vast wooden halls stretching 100 meters or more, where entire clans, dozens of families, lived together beneath one roof. The frame of a longhouse was not just wood and bark, it was the skeleton of a living structure. Two long rows of thick, vertical posts made from elm or oak were dug deep into the ground. These posts formed the backbone of the walls. On top of them, horizontal beams were laid, the bones of the roof. No nails. No metal. Every joint was carved and locked by hand. Grooves and spikes fit perfectly together, held only by precision and strength. Flexible saplings arched over the frame, forming a curved roof strong enough to bear the weight of heavy snow. Inside, a second level of sleeping platforms rested on crossbeams. Below them, the family stored food and supplies, safe, dry, and warm. The entire frame was then wrapped in giant sheets of elm bark. Stripped in spring, when the tree's skin peeled easily, each bark sheet was pressed tight against the walls, overlapping like ancient tiles. Moss and clay sealed the gaps. It was waterproof, windproof, and alive. In summer, they removed parts of the bark to let the breeze flow through. The longhouse was more than a home. It was a symbol of unity, of family, of strength. A sacred space where generations were born, lived, and remembered. But how did these early builders achieve such perfection without metal tools, without blueprints? Let's step inside the ancient carpenter's workshop. To create strong frames, ropes alone were never enough. Master builders carved the mortise and tenon joint, one beam with a tongue, another with a matching hollow. When fitted together, they locked tight. A wooden dowel, a kind of ancient nail, secured the joint. Every cut had to be exact. A single mistake meant the entire frame could fail. At the corners, logs were joined with intricate dovetail locks, shaped to resist the pull of time and gravity. Each beam pressed against another, the weight above tightening the fit below. The whole house became one breathing organism, bound by balance and pressure. Their tools were humble. Stone axes, adzes, chisels made from flint, even beaver teeth. Yet, with these primitive instruments, they built homes that lasted generations. Which of these techniques would you trust? The carved lock? The wooden nail? Or the rope tie? In the next chapter, we'll uncover how these master builders faced their greatest challenge, nature itself. Rain, snow, and wind. The frame was their skeleton. Now it was time to give it skin. On the Great Plains, where trees were scarce and the horizon stretched endlessly, people turned to the one material that nature offered in abundance, bison hides. It took between 10 and 20 hides to cover a single teepee. Each one was tanned, softened, and stitched together with tendons, a masterpiece of craftsmanship led by the women of the tribe. A properly prepared bison hide was strong, yet flexible. It was waterproof, windproof, and surprisingly breathable. In the summer, it allowed air to flow. In the winter, it tightened against the cold. And because it was semi-transparent, sunlight gently filled the interior, casting a warm golden glow. Farther east, in the great river valleys, another innovation appeared, the earth lodge. The Mandan and Pawnee built immense dome-shaped homes. Their wooden frames were first layered with willow branches and grass, then buried under thick turf and earth. The result was astonishing, walls half a meter thick that kept out both frost and fire. In the coldest winters, these dwellings stayed warm. In the blazing summers, they remained cool. They were natural bunkers, perfectly tuned to the rhythm of the land. Each choice of covering bark, hide, or earth was no accident. It was the result of centuries of experimentation and observation. A living science of materials, passed down through generations. But these homes were not just shelters. They were intelligent systems, designed long before the concept of a smart home ever existed. Take the teepee smoke vents, two flaps at the top of the cone, like the ears of an animal. By turning them toward or away from the wind, air pressure could be controlled with precision. Smoke was drawn out, fresh air drawn in. Inside, an additional inner lining created a double wall, forming a natural convection system. Cool air entered from below, warmed near the hearth, and rose through the smoke hole. The air inside was always fresh, never stagnant, never smoky. In the longhouses of the Iroquois, ventilation was equally ingenious. The bark covering could be lifted or slid aside to let air in or seal out the cold. During winter, every gap was packed with moss, turning the house into a fortress against the wind. In summer, some panels were removed entirely, transforming the same home into a shaded, breezy pavilion. In earth lodges, even the entrances were works of design. Long corridors, partially dug into the ground, acted as natural airlocks, trapping cold air before it entered the living space. Each of these designs was an answer to a single question humanity has asked since the beginning of time. How do we live with nature, not against it? This corridor acted as a temperature lock, preventing cold winter air from rushing into the living quarters. Because of this simple but effective design, a stable and healthy microclimate was maintained inside. Warm in winter, cool in summer, and always well ventilated. This was the key to survival in harsh environments. Behind the strength and perfection of all these structures stood an invisible engineered geometry. Indigenous builders intuitively understood the power hidden in certain shapes. Their designs were not based on mathematics, but on centuries of observation, lessons learned directly from nature. The cone, for example, is one of the most stable forms found in the natural world. It distributes wind pressure evenly across its surface, offering no flat wall for the storm to strike. Its round base encloses the maximum possible space with minimal surface area, meaning less heat loss in winter. With the fire placed in the center, warmth spread evenly throughout the interior. The dome of the wigwam or earth lodge followed a similar logic. The arched structure worked through compression, carrying the weight of snow or soil effortlessly. A hemisphere has no weak points, no corners to break, no walls to fall. It is strong, flexible, and aerodynamic, a form sculpted by the wind itself. Even the rectangular longhouse, seemingly less natural, had its own purpose. It was designed to accommodate large families and clans, a geometry shaped not by nature, but by community. Its vaulted roof shed rain and snow with ease, while the long layout mirrored the extended family it sheltered. The placement of homes in villages also followed geometrical and strategic logic. They were often arranged in circles, protecting a central courtyard, a sacred communal space. This arrangement strengthened both defense and unity. There was no excess in these designs. Every line, every curve served a purpose. Their architecture was pure efficiency guided by necessity. But none of these structures could be built alone. Construction was not merely work, it was a social ritual. It united the entire community. Building a longhouse required the coordinated efforts of dozens of people for many weeks. Men felled trees, carried logs, and raised frames. Women gathered bark, wove mats, twisted ropes, and prepared food for the workers. Each person had a role, each action part of a shared rhythm. Even the construction of a simple teepee involved neighbors helping neighbors. Women came together to sew new coverings, exchanging stories and songs as they worked. When the house was finished, the event turned into a communal celebration. A new home was not only for one family, it was a joy for the entire tribe. This collective labor ensured not only speed but also perfection. People built carefully because they were building for those they loved. Mistakes were rare. On the construction site, elders passed down knowledge to the young: carpentry, tanning, weaving. The building process itself became a living school. A house built together was not seen as private property, but as part of the shared heritage of the people. A symbol of unity, cooperation, and belonging. Ultimately, the most important binding material was not rope, nor tendon. It was human connection. It was the spirit of cooperation that made these incredible structures possible. Without it, even the most brilliant ideas would have remained unbuilt. The absence of nails was never a limitation, it was an inspiration. From living frameworks that grew together with the forest, to portable tepees that defied the storms of the plains, Native American architecture represents the pinnacle of adaptation and harmony with nature. Their homes were not just shelters. They were living systems, breathing with the earth itself. Their endurance rested on three timeless pillars: deep knowledge of materials, the elegant logic of geometry, and the unbreakable unity of the community. And perhaps, this is the greatest lesson they left for us: that the most sustainable solutions are not the most technological, but the most wise, the most human, and the most connected to the world around us.